Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k.
Of a heart attack at the age of 50-something, because I would be the person running to the train every day and slipping in as the doors closed every day of my life.
Yeah. Welcome to Daily Cash Flow, guys.
Jesus. Wait, hang on. She's got a call.
I turned off my phone. You're welcome.
Oh, man. So where do you guys want to start?
Read this because I'm trying to get in my cheese.
Yeah, so we'll get in your cheese. So during her 20-year career, Lindsay has completed nearly 10 million square feet of transactions, serving many of the country's leading education, financial services, corporate, and new economy organizations across multiple disciplines, including tenant advisory, agency leasing, portfolio strategy, branding, and consulting advisory work. Prior to launching Open, Lindsay was a partner in Transwestern's New York office, which she co-founded in 2011 and served on the firm's board of directors and executive committee. She began her career in real estate at the Staubach Company. Does that sound about right?
That's a good snapshot. There it
wow.
is.
And an entrepreneur and a great manager and a great leader and smoking smart. Went to an Ivy League school. I can't say that. I barely graduated from my shit-ass school.
Yeah. And the best part of all, I'm Peter's partner on our investment stuff.
There you go. What are you guys excited about right now? Like, to start off, just like, what are there things that are like vibrating in your mind that you're like, oh, this is the thing that I'm really just thinking about all the time?
In life? Or in business?
In business, yeah. I mean, this is a business podcast, right?
In this snapshot of time, I am ever grateful that we have a robust multifamily real estate portfolio that is serving the needs of the community and is full and is pumping out money for it. Wake up, Peter.
Oh, sorry. It just sounded like such a rehearsed, politically correct like statement that you'd make at an industry trade show.
Okay, so you answer it, and then
I'm excited to go on a shopping spree over the next 36 months.
Okay, keep going.
Can you say more about that?
What? Because I believe the economic world as we know it is going to collapse, and I'm going to be able to go on a shopping spree.
Oh, so you're looking forward to taking advantage of the down cycle. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Okay, well, that's fair.
Thank you for rephrasing it in that Ivy League manner.
Keeping it in succinct sound bites for those who are getting lost in your flowing rhythms there.
My flowing rhythms.
Greedy when others are fearful. Yeah, that kind of thing. You know.
Yes.
Yeah. I get that.
But I'm terrified for the world right now. The pendulum has to swing at least in equal and opposite direction and velocity as it did when things were nuts. You know, last year and the year before, with all the stimulus money and everybody had money and was spending money and investing money and values were going through the roof. I think the pendulum's going to swing back. And I think everyone that had money, most of those people are now not going to have money. And all those asset prices that were very inflated, they're now not going to be very inflated. Cost of borrowing is up. Unemployment's going to go back higher. As companies reduce workforce, they're not going to be able to keep that kind of cost structure on their books while interest rates are high. So I think it's going to be probably the most significant economic moment in my lifetime. I think it's going to be a great opportunity if you're ready for it. The question is if you're ready for it. So and what does that mean?
I was going to say the same on the kind of opportunity abound is a coming. And, you know, what we in real estate usually look at unfavorably is rising interest rates, right? In this case, I think it's actually a good thing because we need supply in terms of buying. We need assets to buy that are realistically priced that we can add value to. And we need interest rates to go up a little bit in order to do that, right? Right now, there was no tether on sellers' optimism, right? They were able to, the sky was the limit. There were people willing to buy it at pretty much any price, specifically in the multifamily sector. We're talking office which is my other business, is a totally different animal. But in the multifamily, you know, there is it was frothy. So I think we want to buy. So if we want to buy, we need something to check.
I thought that office would take a crap a lot sooner and much larger than it has. So what's driving office buildings?
So I'll give you kind of the fundamental, and then I'll tell you where we are right now. Office moves slowly. We typically drag about a year behind resi. So as things start to move in the resi sector, it takes us a year to get, for those impacts to be felt. Why does that happen? Office space has very long-term leases. Office space deals are very complicated. The debt is longer. The complexity of the deals are longer. All of those things mean that we move slower. And not to mention, if you look at a company's balance sheet, your office space is your number 2 line item after your payroll. It is a monumentally expensive decision and not something you do on a whim like, I think I want to upgrade my apartment. I'm going to rent a 2-bedroom instead of a 1-bedroom. Like that's easy to do quickly. You can't say, hey, I've got a 10-year lease with 7 years remaining. It costs me this many $1 million a year and is a wildly complicated process to move my team. I don't make that decision overnight. So what happened with the pandemic is first you had stability because you had leases in place. All of your kind of bigger companies, while they weren't going to the office, kept paying their rent. So your Class A product was just fine the whole pandemic. In fact, by the time we came out of the pandemic, or we're coming out of, we're still in it, but coming out of the worst of it, Class A rates started going up. There was a massive flight to quality. New construction in New York, prices had gone up and are continuing to just go up and up and up, and leasing very quickly. They want healthy space. They want light space. They want cool space. If you're getting off your butt from leaving your living room couch and you're going back to the office, it better look good. The idea of getting the cheapest space in the back of the building that has no light and has a drop ceiling and sheetrock walls.
That's over with, right?
Who's going back to that office? No thanks. I'd rather work from home.
So who's getting left behind now?
Class B office is crushed right now. If you have an older building, if you have something that's not well located, if you have something that's older and needs, some TLC,
chopped up,
you are
low ceilings.
Crushed. I don't care what you price it at, you can't give that space away. Can't give it away.
What's the fate of those buildings?
Conversion for a lot of them. A lot of them need to be reimagined as something else. I am hopeful, particularly in Midtown, that the Midtown East rezoning this will be the inflection point to encourage a few other landlords to knock down their buildings, like what JP Morgan Chase has done early on with their new HQ building. Things like that need to happen more. It's the strangest conundrum when you look at how new of a country America is relative to the world and the global economy and the major powers out there. We are the youngest, obviously, by centuries. And yet we are the oldest office stock in the world. And that's because of our zoning laws, right? Many buildings are overbuilt. If you try to rebuild them, they'd have to be smaller. It doesn't make financial sense. There are a number of reasons why our stock is so outdated and why when you have the likes of a Hudson Yard with all of this gorgeous new product and this new way of thinking about office space, it was so well received and rents have literally doubled at Hudson Yards since they first launched.
What are rents now at Hudson Yards?
I mean, mid-level stuff is $160 a foot.
160 a foot.
160 a foot all day long.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and then the really, get high up in the building and the numbers
I remember
go up.
when we hit $100 a foot and everyone was ringing the bell. Like, oh my God, office space is at $100 a foot. So Hudson Yards, 160 a foot.
And up. I mean, that 160, 180, you can get well over 200. All the new splashy stuff, top of the building is going for way over 200.
What else in town is that high?
One Vanderbilt, SL Green spec project right at Grand Central. They, leased the whole building up and the rents there again just kept going up as the project went on. And it's an extraordinary project and a huge success.
Is that sustainable? So once we go 3 years, 5 years, 10 years out and whatever we're experiencing now normalizes, when renewals come, are people going to be like, holy shit, we signed such an expensive lease. Let's go back to like something less expensive. Are they going to be able to continue to maintain those rents?
I think they will. Only, the other factor, we talked about how old the New York City office stock is. It's also the cheapest. So you look at the global metrics around the world and you look at London and Hong Kong and Israel, all over. It is much, much, much more expensive.
So we're playing catch up still.
We're playing catch up. So there was plenty
Same with housing, by the way.
There was plenty of runway for this growth to come. And, the success of companies over the last, really decade have been, it's been a pittance. It hasn't been, nobody's pushed it to that limit to really see. They didn't have to pay it because there were plenty of fabulous options at $100 or $120 a foot. So I'm not stupid. I don't need to pay $200 just for the sake of it if I can get really good quality space. But if now all the best quality space is reset to this new higher bar, I do think it will stay. And what will happen is two things. One, we said nobody wants to go back to the old crappy space.
No.
It's not functional. It's obsolete from a health and wellness point of view, from a morale point of view, and from just the way people use office space. The second thing that's happening is the way people are using and consuming office space. It used to be a place where you would go and you would do your work. You put your head down, you go in your office, you do your work, or you sit at your cubicle. It is not that anymore. Now you can do your work anywhere. We are a virtual economy. Work is Zoom.
So why need an office? Why come to an office?
Because you need an office for collaboration, for mentorship, for cultural nourishing. So you need an office that has a different feel than your old office had. The idea of coming all the way in, schlepping in and commuting, and today paying gas prices, to drive your car.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that if it's not going to be, if it's not 1 + 1 = 3, right? It has to be a really nice experience, and I have to get something out of going there other than getting my work done. Because again, I could do that from my house. So going there means you're going to have the opportunity to learn from somebody or to teach somebody, depending on where you are in your career trajectory. Either of those should be a goal every day, is that you're learning something from someone or teaching somebody something in your office. And it's a chance for cultural just becauses to happen, which is the lifeblood of a company. Culture is your capital, and how you create sustainable, healthy companies and how you make people want to be part of what you're building.
George,
Yeah.
Culture is your capital.
I love that.
God.
It's the zinger.
There we go. We got one. We're not done. There might be more, but wait. It's like a Ginsu knife commercial.
This is amazing stuff. So as a manager myself, I need to be around people. I need to be around my team. I need to have contact with them and be able to look at them and breathe the same air while we're all working together. I mean, it's really important to me. So do people feel like, do owners of businesses and managers and leaders feel like they need to be physically in proximity to their people?
I've been really pondering this a lot because it's a foundational question for me in terms of how I think about business and how we look at the office sector. And I think there are two ways of doing it. The vast majority of people genuinely need to be in person to do it. And that's for a number of reasons. One, they don't know how to do it if they're not in person. It takes a lot of effort.
Vast majority by segmented by industry, or coders and engineers don't, but other people do?
I think it's by company type and by leadership type. So, for example, in the digital economy, right, in the tech world, they're so used to being in this virtual kind of environment anyway, that a number of clients that we know and companies in this sector have taken staff that were in-house, in person before, and changed their job role to be ambassadors of culture, right? Their job is to create virtual community for their teams. That is their whole job, whether that's virtual happy hours or game things that they do, or, you have to be intentional about it, because otherwise your culture dies. You can't say, well, look, we're doing just fine. We've been great the last 2 years. Why don't we think we'll be great the next 2 years? And that is super short-sighted. The reason you were doing fine for the last 2 years is because you had a reserve of capital and you were now depleting it. Right? This was we would call it in our investment. You have a war chest, right? You have your war chest and you start to spend that down. What happens when you get to the end of your war chest? You're either out of business or you have to replenish it. That is your culture. It's the same thing. So unless you're being intentional about it, if you're in an online work environment and people are genuinely not in the office, your culture will die. It's just the reality of where we are.
I love that.
Are there particular steps that you've taken at Open Impact for building culture, that you feel stand out there? These are the hallmarks of how we build culture here?
So we don't believe in 100% virtual workplace. We don't think that's effective, efficient, how we want to grow our talent. So we are mandatory back to work with flexibility as needed. And by the way, we were always that way. We didn't need a pandemic to tell us that people need flexibility in their lives.
Right?
Yeah.
No, I try to lead by example. And I say to every employee that we've ever hired, don't ever miss your kids' ball games. I don't miss mine, kids' ball games. Don't miss your kids' ball games. Get your work done. Come in early, stay late, go after, come back and finish your work afterwards when you get home. It doesn't matter to me. Just get your work done and be accountable, but don't miss the big moments, right? Be at your kids' play. Go to that doctor's appointment. Don't let your health be at risk. Work out, for God's sake. If you need that and you want health and wellness in your life, then make it part of your day. And if you don't know how to do it separately by carving out time, then make it integrated into it, which is kind of how I do things. I call it maximize your minutes.
George, there's no one better. It's unbelievable. She's a tornado of task completion. It's unbelievable.
I don't know how to do it otherwise. Well,
What do you call it?
Maximize your minutes.
We've cited you a few times on the show.
Yeah.
It is just being efficient with your time. If you have the option of, taking a meeting. I have a friend who I know loves certain types of fitness stuff. And I needed to meet with her. We're going to work on a project together. And I said, you know what? Let's do this fitness class together. We could talk at the beginning. We could talk during. She wanted, she kept nudging me, saying she wanted to kill me for making her sweat during the workday. I promised it wasn't a sweaty class, and she sweat, but that's fine. So we worked out and we got a meeting done, all in the same hour that we otherwise would have just been sitting there. Yeah. So go for a walk, have a meeting, get a manicure meeting, have a, I've done meetings at museums. Do a lap in a museum. Yeah. You're walking and talking, and your mind is getting, refreshed with beautiful art. So
George, when I'm with Lindsay, I never know if she's talking to me or if she's talking to the person in her ear pod. It's unbelievable.
That's a little different.
I'm not the only one either.
I'm not proudest of that, but it is, I do often multitask with calls, and that's sometimes just unavoidable with an overloaded schedule. And Zoom has only made it worse.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Because there's no more, for me, the biggest issue with the Zoom world that we have now was the
people that didn't know how to do it right, so you saw that they weren't wearing pants, or is that what you're going to say? Because that was my biggest issue with Zoom.
Because was that you? Were you the guy who stood up and you see your boxers under the table?
No, but there was horror stories for those few years. We all saw them.
Yeah. For me, that was less of the problem, though I did find it very entertaining when somebody would accidentally turn their camera on at the inappropriate time. I just, for the humor of it, I loved it. Yeah. But for me, it was really just, before, if you had a meeting, you had to leave time to get there and then to get back. And that was transit time. Yeah. Now you don't. So from the biggest struggle for me, this is we're open and free here, right?
Yeah.
Just going to the damn bathroom. I don't know how to go to the bathroom when I'm back to back to back. So I either have to end early or start a little late and apologize for showing up a minute or two late or whatever it is, because I don't know when else to run.
That'll be the next technological innovation. Somehow being able to use the bathroom while on Zoom. That'll be
We're going to invest in a virtual pee
Nobody
app.
needs that. Nobody needs that. Don't invent that. Yeah. Whoever you are, don't invent that. Please don't.
So you were talking, I remember we were talking before off camera about giving back. Like that was something that you've been very passionate about, and I guess has really fueled Open Impact in general. Can you talk a little bit about that and what led you into that kind of passion for yourself?
Sure. So when I first started doing nonprofit real estate, almost 20 years ago, it was a small part of what my practice was, doing more, conventional corporate office leasing deals.
Totally.
And it felt good. I loved seeing the work that these nonprofits were doing and how they were impacting the community. And I kind of just wanted to be part of it. So I decided after I finished my first couple of deals that the best way I could do that right now, other than giving of my time, was to donate back some of my fee to the nonprofits. And that just became an immediate mantra. That was it. It was just set in stone from there on. Every nonprofit deal I was going to do, I was going to donate back part of my fee. So then when I launched Transwestern 11 years ago with my partner, we decided that was going to actually be in our contract for our nonprofits. And we went ahead and put that in our contract that we donate back a part of our fee on all of our deals. So that feels good. And knowing that we are contributing to the success of these organizations and the great work that they're doing feels really good. Seeing the impact that the real estate advisory work that we're doing has on the community, whether it's creating schools for the kids who need it most in the most underserved parts of the country and in New York City specifically. It's the social service organizations who are taking care of the hardest to serve. It's the food security organizations, which were so prominent and still are coming through this pandemic. The need for food security is still a growing concern everywhere. And the companies who are supporting these nonprofits and the volunteers who are supporting these nonprofits are helping them do it with dignity, which I find really gratifying to see. So I just feels good to be part of something much bigger than yourself.
When you give back to these organizations, are these your clients that you're signing leases with and representing?
Good question. So it is with our clients. So when it's a nonprofit themselves, then it's very easy. We give it back to that nonprofit. If it's a corporate client, we give it to the nonprofit or impact organization of their choosing, so that they too can be part of making an impact on their communities.
That's great. And because you're the leader in your space, your fees are huge, fat checks. And so you're giving lots of money to these people and places, which I think is great.
Yeah, no, it's to the tune of millions of dollars we've given. So we're really excited.
That's amazing.
About that.
Lindsay's so good, she can make profit from nonprofit. Seriously.
That's very good.
All right. So I want to ask you, you know how I view the world. We've already spoken about that for a minute. How are you viewing the world right now? What changes are you making? What pivots do you foresee that you're going to need to make? What are you seeing other people do that's right or wrong? I mean, I want to get your take on Lindsay's view of the world economically right now. It could be politically, it could be socially too. It could be anything, actually.
We could talk politics, but I don't think that's the nature of this podcast, other than to say I'm very sad about in light of many
it was
laws
a tough week.
that have been upended. And specifically, I just fear for my kids with, now that with concealed weapons not, being perfectly legal now in New York. I just, the carnage is going to be real, and the accidental, I got scared, so I pulled my gun is going to be real, and my kids are out and about in New York City. So that's
so funny because I thought you were talking about Roe v. Wade, not the New York gun law. Yeah.
Roe v. Wade is. We're not going to get into that. It is an abomination against women of epic proportions that is just so devastating to so many communities and people. We here in New York should be good for a while. Those with means will always be good. That's not who is hurt by this law. It's everybody else who can't afford to figure out a way to get the health care that they need in those moments. So I feel for those communities.
But we're not going to get into that.
We're not going to get into that. But I do think, that's part of the so I'm going to go full circle now. Part of the reason we launched Open Impact Real Estate, one of the many factors that contributed to my partner Stephen and I building this company was the riots a few summers ago. And there was a real consciousness in this country about wanting to do something different and hiring diverse suppliers, women and minority-owned businesses is a way for companies to do that. And if we want to let people hire those kind of companies, they have to be there to be hired.
Yeah.
So we built Open Impact Real Estate to provide a super high quality real estate brokerage and services company to the companies who care about the hiring choices they make. So I think, that was an impetus for Open. Now you fast forward to everything that's gone on in this country in these last few weeks. And I think there'll be an even bigger consciousness with companies on the types of partners that they associate with the type of vendors that they choose, with the type of companies that they choose to partner and do business with. So I think the level of consciousness is going to continue to be raised.
Yeah.
And corporations will take the stance that the government hasn't been able to.
Well, in your case, you actually are capable and full of skills and competent. And so people choosing to go with you as a woman-owned business is going to yield good results for them. Have you come across any of these like diversity hires or diversity board appointments where like people get on these boards or have these positions only because of the diversity factor and maybe they're not really as qualified? I'm curious to know.
I think that's a stale mentality. I think people did that once upon a time. It's a horrible expression, the whole idea of checking the box. Which is, if that's ever how we are described, then I have failed at the company that Stephen and I are trying to build. It should not be that, right? It should not be checking the box. There should never be a question as to the capability. I know it shouldn't be,
but like, I've heard and seen lots of examples of people just getting appointed or hired or whatever for having the box getting checked. And the result was, maybe okay in some cases and other cases it wasn't good.
So when the result is not okay, that's where this actually becomes even more detrimental than helpful, right? Because it undermines the credibility of the idea of why diverse mindsets help make companies better. If you're not bringing in highly qualified people to fill those roles, then you're actually hurting the cause more than you are helping it, right? So that is not helpful in my point of view. You really need to find somebody who may not fit the exact box that you wanted to fill in terms of the role, but who has lots of value to add in their own right and will, in fact, add value to the board or to the company or to whomever, is doing this hiring of diverse people. So don't hire diversity for the sake of it. They have to genuinely be adding value and quality.
Wow. All right, we're here with Lindsay Ornstein, Open Impact Real Estate, New York City. She's a lot of things to a lot of different people, but she's brilliant. She's accomplished. I want to know 3 things about yourself that you think are your secret weapons that make you so dangerous.
Killer negotiator with kindness. So I will fight for every last point. I will do it with a smile. We will have fun along the way. And when we're done, you'll be like, holy crap, what did I just agree to?
That's a great one.
That's one. Integrity. It's all you have is your reputation. Don't do anything that ever puts that at risk. You do the right thing 100 out of 100 times, not 99. 100 out of 100 times you do the right thing, even if it means you don't get a deal done, even if it means you make less money, it will come back around in the long run, and your integrity is far more important.
I love that.
And then over communicating. Setting expectations is everything. Most problems that arise in work conflict and personal conflict happen due to poor communication. Get ahead of communication, follow up with communication, include more people in a conversation than you may otherwise think you need to, and it will eliminate problems before they become problems. And
it's funny because when you say over communication, I really wasn't thinking about that definition of the word. I was just thinking that you just talk a lot.
Well, it lends itself nicely to me, doesn't it?
My gosh. I mean, you get the over communication trophy.
No, it's one of the foundational things I always tell our team members is if a client ever comes to you and says, hey, where do we stand with blah, 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 you messed up in your communication. They should never be wondering. You should be ahead of it. You should have sent an email early in the week that says, hey, we're still waiting on the answer from so-and-so. We hope to get back to you later this week. Now they know that you're thinking of them and that you're on top of it, because left unsaid, people fill the air with all the worst possible outcomes. They're not thinking of me. They don't care. They forgot. They're not doing their job. You name it. That's what they're thinking. So get ahead of your communication.
Biggest deal you've ever done?
I can't say exactly this one yet because it's not quite closed. I'm working on one right now. But I think, some of my charter school deals, I've done some really big ones, and they've been super satisfying. They take a ton of time. They're incredibly complicated. And when they're done, they're not done, because then you first have to build them, and it takes 3 years to build it after we finish negotiating the deal. But seeing some of the buildings out of the ground now and open and operational, it's amazing.
Favorite place to travel to?
Capri, Italy. We're going next year.
I knew you were going to say that.
I love Capri.
We're going to have to talk about that. We're going to have to figure out the details.
Yes, we are. But I have not been in almost a decade. Thank you, pandemic. I would have been sooner, but I absolutely adore.
How is it doing business in New York City now? New York is seen as one of these states and one of these cities that's highly regulated, that people have left the city because it's become too complicated to do business, or too difficult, or too frustrating with the regulations and the taxes and all of this. How do you view New York as a hub for doing business compared to maybe how it was 10 years ago? And perhaps even how does it stack up against California and Illinois? Just the past few weeks, there's been 3 or 4 big names leaving Illinois and leaving Chicago for Texas, right? We had Boeing, Caterpillar, Citadel, all saying sayonara, Illinois. What are you seeing in New York? How is New York able to compete?
Thank goodness we have a new regime sitting at the helm and with Mayor Adams, because he seems to be much more business friendly than his predecessor. But we do have a very vocal extreme left that is so anti-business. It makes it hard to do things. I mean, the crime of the century was Amazon not coming. I mean, the economic...
You're killing me with this.
It kills me. And the exact people that they're setting out to protect and serve are the ones who are going to be the most hurt by Amazon not coming. All of those jobs, all of that tax revenue, all of that infrastructure, all of that housing, all of that could have helped the constituents that they're allegedly protecting went out the window when they scared Amazon
So I
off.
believe that this is because our elected lead. Well, first of all, being an elected leader is such a shitty job. Like, who would want to do it, right? So you get like a lower quality of talent pool that even wants to put themselves out there and run for these positions. And then the ones who win, it's like either a popularity contest, or they're unskilled. They don't have experience. Like they don't know how to make good policy. They've never run businesses, most of them. I like a few of these candidates that actually have business experience or leadership experience, but most of these people don't. And then they end up in these positions where they're making decisions about Amazon coming into Queens, or whatever the issue is, and they just don't know about policy. They don't have the aptitude, skill set, or experience. It drives me bananas. That's what I think of most of these people in these elected offices.
Or they know about policy and they don't know about business or the impact of policy on business. You need somebody who understands both. I mean, you need Mayor Mike Bloomberg was the special sauce. He was just amazing. And he extended his term. I wish he could have extended it.
Right. He got 12 years. We were hoping for
he should be like a Supreme Court. They should have a limitation.
You know what's
Mayor
funny
Mike
about that? You know what's
forever.
funny? He was such a wimpy presidential candidate. Like, what happened? He shit the bed when it came to his presidential candidacy, I thought.
I think he's just so New York, and it doesn't necessarily translate, particularly, in the middle of the
It didn't
country.
translate at all.
But it just, which is unfortunate because I'm a huge fan of his. I think that politics aside, New York is safe relative to other big cities just because of the talent pool that it's here. You cannot argue that New York is where everybody in the world wants to be more than almost anywhere else. It is just has this allure, it has this draw, and then it has all of these magical components that make it such a rich employee base for so many industries. You have incredible technology companies here. You have amazing universities, amazing hospitals. You have, financial services.
I always thought New York
legal.
was great if you're really poor, super, super, super rich, and single. Like, those are the three candidates that are primed to love New York City. Because, if you're poor, there's lots of free things to do. The subway's getting more and more expensive every time I look. But, it's a cheap way to get around. You could see the whole city and get anywhere. And there's always things in Central Park, and there's free stuff everywhere. And if you're super rich, well, then obviously you can weather all of that stuff that's tough to weather in New York. But if you're in the middle, I always felt like New York just squeezed the shit out of you.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when I lived there, I was super poor and it was great. Yeah. And now you're making a little bit more money.
And Lindsay lives there, and she's super rich. And she's able to opine about all of these things about, but really though, it's, I've known Lindsay a long time. I've watched her trajectory, and she's conquered New York City. Yeah. Everything about it, socially, economically, business-wise, geographically. She's my go-to person for New York. So I am interested to hear, George, what she has to say about this stuff, because she knows. She's actually gone from 0 to 100. Yeah. Which a lot of people
Lindsay,
can't do.
You mentioned the talent pool. New York just draws an incredible talent pool. Have you felt the pressure of kind of this great resignation thing where everything's competitive in terms of, how do you retain talent in this era of this high competition?
That's a good question, because I don't think you know this, George, but Lindsay and her company are constantly voted the best places to work.
We are fortunate. We talked earlier about culture, and culture has been foundational, to the company that I previously helped build, Transwestern, and the company we're building now at Open Impact Real Estate. And, winning Crane's Best Places to Work list, the number one spot, I just was, the accomplishment of my career. And then to do it again and then again, it just kind of reinforced to me how important it is to spend that time nurturing that culture and building it. So no, we have not had issues with the Great Resignation. Yeah. I think because of our culture and because of the work environment we've created and the really rewarding work that we do. But it is a problem out there. And I think you're seeing a backlash now with the companies who did the mandated back to work policy, and companies and employees just saying nah, I don't think so. I think I'm really good what I'm doing. I hear you. I'm supposed to be in 3 days a week, but go ahead and fire me. Try to replace me. Yeah. Good luck with that. So, the power paradigm is definitely sitting in the employee camp right now. That too will change the second this economy starts to falter. So when there's instability in the markets and companies have to tighten up, and that's probably coming, we can all agree in some way or another, who are the ones who are going to stay? The employees who've been sitting on their couch straight for the last year and who have not bothered to come into the office at all, or those who come in sometimes, right? Even if you're doing the exact same job, you're saying, but look, I'm producing just as much as he or she is. Okay, but I know them, and I heard about what they did with their family last weekend, and I like them. And I don't really know you that well because I only get to talk to you for 2 minutes before or after a Zoom call. And yes, your work is great, but work is more than just the actual work you do. It's about the experience you have, and the people that you're around and sharing in something together. And you need people together to do that. So I think there's going to be some jobs gone when this economy starts to falter.
Yeah. There's a relationship. The way this is a huge theme on this show, is like everything comes back to relationship.
Everything's relationship.
Everything is
everything.
relationships.
Yeah.
It is literally the one word I can attribute to how I've built my career.
Yeah.
I've spent my whole career working on building relationships within my community, out of my community, friends, business people. I just am constantly, I set time in my calendar to lunch. I actually have now officially blocked out my entire lunch window every day of every week.
Yeah.
This happened.
Really?
I just did it this week.
I didn't know this about you.
It
didn't
just
know
happened.
you were a lunch person.
Because, I during the pandemic, it didn't matter what time we had calls because where were you going? So I had regular 12 o'clock calls. I had regular 1 o'clock calls. And now that we're coming out of it and I'm trying to get back into it, I was having a really hard time. And, when people would schedule meetings, they would see I was free, let's say from 12 to 1:30 or whatever time it was. And they just put a meeting in there. And I said, guys, we got to not do that. And they said, just block your calendar. I said, oh, okay. I think I'll actually do that. So I've blocked from 12:30 to 2 o'clock every day. And if I don't have a lunch meeting, then it's, I can give that time back to a Zoom or some focused work or whatever I'm going to do with it. But I think it's more, productive for me to be out and networking and connecting.
Yeah.
Wow.
With both Transwestern and Open Impact, you founded those with partners. And I was wondering, when you're looking for a partner, what is it you look for, and how do you cultivate that particular relationship over time?
Excellent question, George. And the same metric applies to Peter. So now it's my turn to be nice to Peter. So, to me, a partner is all about integrity, personality, work ethic, intellect, diligence, and making the right decisions when the rubber hits the road. Mm-hmm. And I think that I've been really fortunate in my career. Peter is exemplar at this. He is maybe one of the smartest people I've ever had the privilege of working with. He knows everything about everything. Nobody diligences a deal like Peter. He knows more about a building when we buy it than the seller ever knew after owning it for 30 years. And I kid you not, I've seen it happen in real time.
We just talked about that last week with our guy, the strip mall guy.
Peter is financially just super astute and really creative on how to structure deals, on how to maximize value from deals. So our investors get the huge benefit of his both, creative structuring and his very diligent management of costs and budgeting and hiring the right team and the right execution to bring it in at the best price and the right returns. So, his acumen is just off the charts, and he's just a really good person. And Peter is the most genuine person I know. When things go bad in my life, he's the first person I call, after my husband and my family, of course, but the first other person I call is always Peter. And he always makes the time to be there when I need him. And that's really reassuring. And I'm very fortunate that it's not very often that happens. But when it does, to know that I have that person who's always there for me, we're talking, that's my personal level. And this is my business partner. Mm-hmm. So to me, you have to be the full package. I don't compromise on anything in life. And I'm certainly not going to do that with my partner. So, if you're my partner, you have to be the best of everything. And if you're the best at most things, that's really nice. You're just not going to be my partner.
Mm-hmm.
Lindsay, I'll give you some background on Lindsay. The first day I met her, she gave me this whole lecture about perfection, and she needs perfection, and she strives for perfection. I'm like, holy, what does that mean? And she's like, you got to have everything. You can't just have 99 out of 100. You have to have 100 out of 100. So I'm like, oh man. Like, I was stressed.
Yeah.
It was stressful at the begining. I was like, I don't know if I'm measuring up.
Pressure's on.
It's nice to know that I think I've measured up a little bit.
You more than measured up, but I've really tried to temper that. Perfectionism is not a healthy attribute to walk through life with. So I've rephrased. Do you want to hear my new way I think about things?
Let me hear it.
I still want to be a straight A student, but you don't need to get 100 to get an A, right? A 94 still gets you the A. So to me, I care about going fast, getting deals done. If you stop to make sure everything is absolutely perfect, time is more valuable so often than those little marginal things that make it perfect.
That's so funny. I'm picking up my phone. I want to read you something. I got a message from a follower, social media follower, who said to me,
hello, social media follower,
who said to me, well, let me read this to you because, so the question was, what do you do to pivot or start over? Or what's the fastest way to to becoming successful. And this person writes to me, they said, it's my weak point, how to start over when you want to make everything perfect. So I say perfect is a myth, and it's the biggest killer of success. Lose perfect in favor of achieving your goals. So it's okay to strive for perfection because that level of excellence will carry over into every other aspect of your life. But the prize is getting the ball across the goal line, regardless of how pretty it looks. You want points on the board for goals scored, not points for your level of perfection and having gotten there.
Well said, Peter.
And so I feel like I gave that person good advice, and I just read it now because obviously it's what we're talking about. But so is that what you're saying? You agree with that?
I 100% agree with that. You know, and when I was talking before about if you want to be my partner, you have to have everything. That doesn't mean you're perfect. Lord knows I'm not perfect, and neither are you, my love. But you know, we are exceptional, I think, at what we do and on who we are and our character and the effort we put forth, and we make ourselves the best version of ourselves that we can be for the benefit of our families, those around us, and the investors that we serve.
You were named Executive of the Month, I think it was, by New York Real Estate Journal in 2013. You posted about this recently, and so I wanted to pull this quote out that you said, "Women are pulling other women up through the ranks from within our own industry, creating a much smoother path to success. In decades past, pioneering women had to navigate much rougher terrain to meet their goals." I was wondering, how has the role of women changed in your mind over time, and like what else needs to be done? What's the future of that?
Yeah. I think people overcomplicate the notion of how do you have more women in your industry? How do you have more people of diversity in your industry? And they think there's some massive Herculean effort that has to go into creating diversity in these industries that lack it. And to me, it's as simple as finding really smart, qualified people who can be taught to do the job you have to do. People sit there waiting and saying, I need a real estate broker who fits this criteria and I just can't find one. Yes, of course you can't find one because there's a reason. We didn't have them before. They're not going to suddenly appear. You have to create them. So how do you create them? What we've done is we've taken people from lateral industries and we've pulled them in and we taught them the real estate, right? If they're smart, they're capable, and they have the right integrity, you can teach them the part that's specific to what you do. So it's pulling the right people in. It's starting early and starting young, whether you're having internship programs, you're working with colleges or universities to create a path for these people to come in to your career, whether that's women, people of color, whomever the people are you're trying to attract. And I think there are lots of opportunities to then grow from within by just simply shining a light on people who are doing a great job. If you shine a light on something, it will grow. It's a simple, basic fact in agriculture, and it works with women and people of color as well. If you just put a light on them and say, what a great job this person's doing. How about a little bit more responsibility? Isn't that person doing great? You should do some more projects with that person. Bringing them into the lens where they otherwise might not have been makes people want, your accolade from above is everything.
Yeah.
So if you can just spread your positive praise onto people who you want to see grow, it will happen. But you have to make the effort to do it.
Love that.
The pandemic is going to help women in the long run, but it's going to be a little bit detrimental in the short run. In the long run, a few really good things are going to come out of the pandemic. Men have taken a much larger role in the home life, in raising children, in taking care of the house, in basic responsibilities at home, because the pandemic necessitated it. That is going to shift burden off of women and into a more balanced, hopefully, dynamic between husbands and wives or partners or roommates or whomever it might be at home. So that will be helpful to women. The way work gets done is now already acceptable to be a flex work environment where you can do some work from home and some work in the office. That will be helpful to women who will be able to then navigate being home and at work and not feel like they have to find a reason or make an excuse or get permission to work from home on a certain day or to have a more flexible calendar than the other colleagues in her office may have. Yeah. So that will help women. But right now, what happened in the heart of the pandemic is that this wasn't set yet. And a lot of women just had to leave the workforce because they had to take care of children at home who were being homeschooled, or their homes, or their family members, or their parents, or whomever they were taking care of. So we did lose a lot of women right now in the workforce, but I have very high confidence that they will come back and then thrive as a result of some of the changes that are happening right now.
Said by the top woman. So I have a question. What is the Mommy Bank? I've heard you say it, but I really don't know what it is.
So on your podcast, you talk a lot about investing and being a intelligent investor and teaching your children financial responsibility. It is one of the great failures, in my opinion, of academia today, is that it's not integrated into public schools and into ongoing education. Financial intelligence is foundational to a life of economic stability. And to do that, you have to be taught early. And I know you've said, Peter, if anyone's going to teach it, it should be you, the parent. So that is exactly what we've done. We've created the Mommy Bank, where our kids get a very favorable interest rate of 20% every 3 months, cumulative and compounding. So
Can I get in on that?
Yeah,
I know, right? You got some money? Bring it to the Mommy Bank. And we picked my husband and I picked a ridiculously high interest rate and a very short time frame on purpose, because we want them to quickly see what happens when you grow your money and how putting money to work is the only way to ultimately build financial stability and wealth over time. So my girls are invested in the Mommy Bank, all 3 of them. And my little one was giddy when I told her the other day that her money has already doubled and she wants to know what she can do with it. And one of the rules, though, is that whatever you do with it, some of it always has to go to charity. So that's not, there could be some splurges, but, you have to pick what you want the money to go to that'll help other people too. So that's the rules of the Mommy Bank. It is inspired partly by a really great book I encourage everyone to read if you want to have basic financial literacy. It's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I think you've talked about it before, have you?
Yeah, it's a come up. Yeah.
Yeah, it is fantastic. And the basic premise of the book is about making your money work for you and not you working for your money. And that is something I try to instill in my kids. It's something I try to instill in our team. I said, great, you're earning a great living here. Make sure you're putting that money to work somewhere else outside of this office so that it's working for you and it's growing over time.
Was that like a value that you learned from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or was that something that like earlier on was instilled in you either with family or friends or business or that kind of thing?
So I'm really fortunate that I grew up in a family that was very open about finances. My father, Glenn Stern, is just an amazing self-made entrepreneur who has helped build this wonderful family business that so many of my family members work in to this day. And he had us investing. My grandfather had us investing in stock as kids and showing us how to read, the newspaper and what all the stock tickers meant, and teaching us what investing looked like and how to grow your money. And for them, it was necessity, right? They didn't come from money. So they had to be really prudent with their money and how they grew it and took care of their family. And that was instilled in me from a very young age. So I'm trying to do the same for my kids.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love
It
that.
is great.
Well, thank you so much, Lindsay, for being here. This was fantastic. Yeah.
Lindsay Ornstein from New York City, down with us in the studio. Thank you, Lindsay. So great to have you.
This was fun. Anytime.
Anytime you want to come back, let us know. Yeah.
Deal.
And thank you, Peter, for continuing to be here.
Thank you always.
Well, we're always
sharing
here.
your wisdom with the world.
Cool. All right. see
Thanks, everybody.
If you like what you just heard, you can subscribe to The Daily Cash Flow on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'd love it if you left us a review. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at SiegelCap and on Instagram at Siegel.cap. As always, if you're an accredited investor, go to SiegelCapital.com and take our survey to see if you qualify to take part in one of our apartment building deals. That's SIEGEL Capital.com.